The first thing Elira forgot was gravity. Not her name, not the blood on the marble, not the Dragon King's voice ordering her memory erased. Gravity. The spell struck her between the eyes in a clean white line, and for one breath the royal court of Draverin became very still. Then every silver goblet lifted from the banquet tables. Every dropped sword rose point first into the air. Every noble's silk sleeve floated away from their wrist. Every candle flame stretched upward like it had remembered a sky beyond the ceiling. Elira Vale opened her blank, glowing eyes, and the entire dragon court began to rise. A noblewoman screamed as her jeweled slippers left the floor. 2 guards grabbed at a pillar and missed. A lord clutched his golden wine cup as if dignity could weigh him down. High above them, banners embroidered with black dragons loosened from the walls and drifted like drowned things in pale moonlight. Elira floated at the center of it all, barefoot, silent, ash-gray servant dress torn at one sleeve, dark hair lifting around her face like ink underwater. Her hands were still stained from the tray she had dropped when she saw what no servant was meant to see. The dead prince behind the throne, the knife in High Archivist Morvain Thorn's hand, and the Dragon King arriving 1 heartbeat too late. Caelorn Veyr rose more slowly than the others, not because gravity still loved him, but because his dragonfire fought the broken rule harder than human bodies could. He stood at the foot of the obsidian dais, black armor catching the light, gold eyes fixed on Elira with a fury too controlled to be panic. Around his shoulders, a faint dragon shadow unfurled and clawed downward, trying to anchor him to a floor that no longer remembered how to hold kings. "Do not move," he ordered. No one obeyed. Not because they dared disobey him, because the world had. Elira stared at him without recognition. That unsettled him more than the floating court. A moment ago she had known him. Everyone in Draverin knew the Dragon King. Caelorn was the last living ruler of the Veyr bloodline, feared for dragonfire that could melt iron gates and silence rebellions before they reached the palace steps. Servants lowered their eyes when he passed. Nobles bent so deeply their jewels touched stone. Even Morvain Thorn, keeper of royal histories and butcher of inconvenient truth, spoke to him with careful respect. But Elira looked at him like he was an object in a room whose purpose she had forgotten. "Your Majesty," Morvain gasped, floating sideways beside the memory altar, his long silver sleeves twisting around him like pale snakes. "The erasure! Misfired!" Caelorn did not look at him. "I can see that." The girl's mind resisted. Elira heard the word girl and felt nothing. That frightened her, though she did not know why. She knew she had a body. She knew the room was high and dark and full of people who feared falling even while they rose. She knew the marble floor below looked wrong from above. She knew blood made a red curve near the throne. She knew the dead prince's eyes were open, but she could not remember why that mattered. She could not remember whether death was supposed to stay down. Morvain reached for the silver memory rod drifting near his hand. "If I strike again, I can empty the damaged section." Caelorn turned then. The air around him warmed. "Touch her again, and I will burn the hand from your arm." The court went silent in midair. Elira's head tilted slightly. His threat should have frightened her. Instead, some part of her wondered why fire obeyed him if stone no longer obeyed the ground. Morvain swallowed. "She witnessed a royal crime." Caelorn's jaw tightened. "A crime you were standing over. I found the prince already dying. You had his blood on your knife. I tried to cut out the poison seal. Then why erase her?" Morvain's eyes flicked toward Elira. Too fast. Caelorn saw it. So did something inside Elira that had not been erased. A tiny pressure formed behind her ribs. Not memory, not thought. A rule. Quiet, ancient, sleeping under the empty places in her mind. Witnesses remember direction, and someone had tried to make the only witness forget which way truth fell. The words did not appear in the room. They appeared inside her. Elira blinked. The court shifted. Everyone rose another foot. A scream tore loose as one lord struck the chandelier and spun helplessly, scattering crystal drops through the air like frozen rain. Caelorn's dragon shadow dug its claws into nothing. Pain flashed across his face so quickly, Elira almost missed it. Golden fire cracked beneath the skin at his throat, then vanished. Morvain saw. His expression sharpened. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "the longer she remains empty, the more laws may loosen. Caelorn's gaze stayed on Elira. What laws? Morvayn did not answer. Elira drifted higher. Her bare toes brushed the edge of a floating silver tray. It spun away. The tray had her name scratched beneath it. She knew the letters, Elira. But the name did not settle into her. It hovered near her mind like a bird afraid of a trap. Elira. Was that hers? A woman in servant gray floated near the far wall, clutching a curtain rope. She stared at Elira with pity and terror, as if she knew the answer. Elira tried to remember the woman. Nothing came, only the strange rule behind her ribs. Witnesses remember direction. Down was missing. No, down had been taken. Her glowing eyes moved to Morvayn. The memory rod in his hand pulsed white. Caelorn followed her gaze. Put it down, he said. Morvayn's polite mask cracked. If she remembers too slowly, the court may never come down. If she remembers too quickly, everybody here will fall at once. The floating nobles began whispering prayers. Caelorn's face hardened. Then we lower them one by one. Morvayn laughed once, breathless and bitter. You still think this is magic? This is law, remembering it was wounded. Elira turned toward him fully. The court tilted with her. Swords drifted toward the ceiling, tables rolled upward. The dead prince's body, still hidden behind the throne, lifted into view for the first time. His black funeral collar was half-fastened. A gold seal had been burned into his tongue. The court saw him. All whispers died. Caelorn looked at the body, and something old broke behind his eyes. Saren, he whispered. Brother. The word entered Elira's empty mind and found a place to hurt. Morvayn moved. Not toward Caelorn. Toward Elira. The memory rod flashed. Caelorn lunged through the weightless air, but too slowly. No one knew how to move when the world had forgotten falling. The rod touched Elira's forehead. White fire split across her vision. Morvayn spoke the erasure command. Forget what you witnessed. Elira's mouth opened. For the first time since the spell, she spoke. I forgot the wrong law. The marble floor cracked beneath them. Not downward, upward. Ancient letters rose from the stone in burning gold, circling Elira's floating body like a crown no one had placed on her. World rule holder identified. Gravity memory damaged. Restoration unsafe. Caelorn stared at the words. Morvayn went pale. Elira looked at the Dragon King, blank-eyed and glowing, while every noble, sword, throne, and corpse drifted helplessly around her. Then the floor wrote one final warning. If she remembers, they fall. Caelorn had ordered one servant's memory erased. Now his entire court was suspended inside the damage. The warning burned across the cracked marble beneath them, gold letters rising upward instead of settling into stone. Nobles floated above banquet tables. Swords drifted point first near the ceiling. The dead prince hovered behind the throne, with his black funeral collar half-fastened and a gold seal burned into his tongue. Every breath in the dragon court sounded careful now, as if even panic had become afraid of falling. Elira floated at the center of it, blank-eyed and glowing, with her dark hair moving around her face like smoke underwater. Morvayn Thorn lifted the silver memory rod again. Your Majesty, the correction must be immediate. Caelorn's dragon shadow tightened around him, claws scraping at air that refused to become floor. You will not touch her. If she remains empty, the damage spreads. You emptied her. Morvayn's mouth hardened. By your command. The words struck the hall harder than the broken gravity. Elira turned her glowing eyes toward the Dragon King. Caelorn did not look away. Something inside her tried to recognize shame. It failed. Her mind had too many missing rooms. But the shape of his guilt reached her before the feeling did. He was not clean. He had stopped Morvayn only after the spell had already opened her skull and stolen the map of the world. She spoke slowly, as if each word had to find its own weight. You ordered the empty place inside my head. Caelorn's jaw tightened. Yes. A whisper moved through the floating court. He did not soften the word. He did not dress it in necessity. He let it hang between them, ugly and royal. Elira looked down at the marble that no longer knew how to be below. Then stand where your command lands. The court went silent. Caelorn bowed his head once. Not deeply. Enough to make every noble see it. Morvayn's eyes flashed. This is not the hour for servant judgment. She is unstable. A second erasure can seal the damaged section before another world rule loosens. Elira's hand moved toward the floating tray near her hip. The silver tray spun slowly, turning the scratched letters beneath it toward the light. E-L-I-R-A. Her name. She touched the marks. Nothing returned. No childhood. No mother's face. No first day in the kitchens. No reason her fingers had learned to grip hot metal without flinching. Only a direction. Not down. Toward truth. A memory can be stolen. A law can only be wounded. The thought unfolded inside her like an old door opening. Morvain saw her eyes change. Do not let her think. Elira turned toward him. Do not decide what I am allowed to remember just because you are afraid of falling. The words came sharper than she expected. Caelorn's gaze fixed on her. Not with pity. With attention. Good. She did not want pity from the man whose order had made her hollow. Elira looked at the dead prince. Caelorn Veyr drifted slowly above the throne. One hand curled near the gold seal burned into his tongue. The blood from his wound had not fallen. It floated in small red beads around his body, each drop trembling between one law and the next. I remember the knife, Elira whispered. Morvain went still. Caelorn's voice lowered. Whose hand held it? Elira closed her eyes. The court tensed. She could feel them wanting the whole memory. They wanted guilt neat and fast. They wanted the floor returned. They wanted her mind to become useful now that their lives depended on it. No. If she remembered too quickly, they would fall. If she stayed empty, the world would keep breaking. So she chose one small piece. Not the hand. Not the face. Direction. I remember which way the knife fell. The red beads of Caelorn's blood shivered. One drop separated from the rest. It did not fall to the floor. It fell sideways. No, Elira thought. It remembered a different down. The drop moved through the air toward Caelorn's mouth, touched the gold seal burned into his tongue, then slid away toward Morvain's memory rod. Morvain's fingers tightened around it. Caelorn saw. His dragonfire flared. Morvain lifted his chin. The prince spoke a forbidden world rule. The seal was necessary. Caelorn's face went cold. My brother was murdered. Princes die, Morvain said. Laws must remain useful. The court heard that. So did Elira. A pressure opened behind her ribs, deeper than the one before. The room shifted again. A chandelier rose higher. Several nobles screamed as their bodies drifted toward the painted vault of dragons above. Caelorn raised both hands. Gold fire spread from his palms in long, controlled streams. The flames curled around 3 floating guards and lowered them by inches. Pain crossed his throat. Elira saw the gold crack beneath his skin. Every time he forced the world to obey, it hurt him. Morvain saw it too, and smiled almost imperceptibly. Dragonfire cannot anchor world law, he said. You may lower bodies. You cannot restore direction. Only the witness can. Elira looked at the nobles reaching for pillars, curtains, tables, each other. Then at Caelorn, he said quietly, Remember slowly. Her laugh came out small and broken. Do not ask me to save the people who cheered when you emptied me. A noblewoman flinched. Caelorn accepted the blow. I am not asking for them first. Elira's eyes narrowed. He looked toward Caelorn's body. For him? For the first time, Elira understood that grief had weight even in a room without gravity. The word brother moved through Elira's hollow mind and hurt again. She hated that pain made her human faster than memory did. Morvain thrust the memory rod forward. If she remembers the dead first, the body will choose accusation. That is not justice. That is a damaged rule seeking shape. Caelorn turned his head. You are afraid of where he will fall. Morvain's lips thinned. Elira drifted closer to Caelorn's body. The court shifted with her, but more gently now, as if the broken law had begun listening for permission. She reached toward the prince's hand, stopping before she touched him. I choose to remember down for the dead prince first, she said. The floor answered with a low golden pulse. Restoration partial. Risk accepted. Caelorn's dragon shadow spread beneath Elira and Caelorn, not touching her, not claiming the act, only bracing the air in case the law broke too hard. Elira closed her eyes. Down. Not the floor. Not safety. Truth. The dead prince dropped. The court screamed, but Saren did not fall to the marble. His body fell through the air in a straight line toward the person whose act had last changed his fate. Morvayn stumbled backward, helpless in the weightless hall. Prince Saren's body fell straight into Morvayn's arms. Then the knife rose from the blood behind the throne and pointed toward the Dragon King. The knife did not point at Caelorn like an enemy. It pointed at him like a command returning home. Every noble in the floating dragon court saw the blade turn toward their king, and every one of them suddenly remembered how useful treason could be. Fear shifted shape in the air. A moment ago they had wanted Caelorn to save them. Now they wanted distance from him, from the knife, from the dead prince in Morvayn's arms, from the servant girl whose empty mind had made the room honest. Elira watched the blade tremble in the bloodlit air. It did not seek Caelorn's hand. It sought his chest. No, not chest. Authority. The thought came from the same hollow place where direction had begun rebuilding itself inside her. She could feel the difference, though she did not know how to explain it. The knife did not remember fingers. It remembered permission. Morvayn held Saren's floating body as if grief had finally chosen him, but his eyes were calm. Too calm. The world rule has named its murderer, he said. Several nobles gasped. Caelorn did not deny it. That frightened Elira more than if he had. His dragon shadow hung below him like a torn black banner, claws digging into nothing, golden fire trembling along its spine. His face had gone still in that terrible way. Powerful men became still when blame found the part of them that already believed it deserved entry. Elira looked from him to the knife. No, she said. The word steadied one spinning candle near her shoulder. Morvayn's gaze cut to her. You cannot know what the rule means. Your memory is broken. I know direction, Elira answered. The gold letters under her floating body brightened. She pointed at the knife. It named direction, not motive. Caelorn's eyes lifted to her. Something dangerous moved there. Not hope. Hope would have been too soft. This was the agony of a man who had expected condemnation and found a more difficult truth. Morvayn's mouth tightened. A servant girl, with half a mind, should not interpret royal law. Elira turned toward him slowly. The court tilted with her. A countess whimpered as her jeweled chair drifted toward the ceiling. Elira did not look away from Morvayn. Then stop being afraid of what half my mind remembers. The knife shook harder. The gold seal on Saren's tongue flared. Saren's dead mouth opened. No sound came. The seal burned brighter, and his jaw closed again as if an invisible hand had pushed the word back into his throat. Elira felt it. Not silence. Reversal. Every word Saren tried to speak was being forced to fall inward. His words cannot leave, she whispered. Caelorn's dragonfire darkened. Morvayn. Morvayn adjusted his grip on the prince's body. The prince spoke a forbidden world rule. I sealed his tongue to protect the court from disorder. Caelorn's voice was low. Before or after he was dying. Morvayn smiled without warmth. Direction matters, does it not? Elira looked at Caelorn. What order did you give? The question cut through the hall. Caelorn's jaw locked. For a moment she thought he would refuse. He was a king. Kings could hide behind command and call it burden. But then his gaze dropped to Saren's sealed mouth. Earlier tonight, he said, each word roughened by restraint. Saren sent word that the Royal Archive had erased a world rule before. Morvayn's eyes sharpened. Caelorn continued. He said if he spoke it aloud, the court would try to bury him before dawn. I was in council. I ordered the guards to bring him to the throne room and silence the prince until I arrived. Elira felt the knife pulse. The court heard the word. Silence. Morvayn's expression barely changed, but the memory rod in his hand glowed once. Elira understood. Not all at once. Enough. Your command had teeth, she said. He used them. The knife drifted closer to Caelorn. A king's hand does not need to hold the knife if his command teaches it where to fall. That was why crowns feared witnesses more than assassins. The words entered Elira's mind. With a pressure so deep her bones seemed to hear them. Caelorn closed his eyes once. When he opened them, his grief had become something harder. Stand me under it, he said. Morvayn's brows lifted. How noble. Caelorn ignored him. If my command gave the knife direction, then let the rule test me. No, Elira said. His eyes returned to her. She hated how quickly he obeyed that single word, hated that she noticed. "You do not get to make your guilt useful by bleeding first," she said. His face changed. Not anger. Recognition. "Then what do you require?" The question was quieter than any command he had given. Elira looked at Seren. The prince's body still hovered in Morvaine's arms, caught between accusation and silence. She looked at the seal on his tongue, the knife aimed at Caelorn's authority, the memory rod in Morvaine's hand, and the court waiting to turn complexity into execution. "I need one more piece," she said. Morvaine's voice sharpened. "If she remembers more, the fall may begin." Elira glanced at the floating nobles. "Then let them hold on to something." No one laughed. No one complained. One by one, nobles grabbed curtain ropes, pillars, table legs, each other. They obeyed the servant because the world was listening to her now. Caelorn extended one hand, palm open, golden fire trembling there. "Use my dragonfire as anchor." Morvaine's smile returned. "Dragonfire cannot anchor world law." "No," Elira said, watching the flames struggle downward. "But it can anchor fear." Caelorn understood. He lowered his hand slowly, and gold fire spread beneath the floating court in thin threads, not forcing gravity, only giving terrified bodies something to hold. Nobles clutched the fire like ropes, gasping when it burned but did not consume them. Pain crossed Caelorn's throat again. Elira saw the gold crack beneath his skin. He was paying for every body he steadied. Not enough to forgive him. Enough to matter. She turned back to Seren. "I choose to remember the word he died trying to say." The floor pulsed. Restoration partial. Danger. Comment reversal. Morvaine moved. Caelorn moved too. This time Elira was faster than both. She lifted one hand. "Stai." The word did not command them. The damaged rule did. Morvaine froze with the memory rod raised. Caelorn froze with dragonfire around his arm. Elira drifted toward Seren's sealed mouth. The gold seal burned so bright it painted her blank eyes with flame. She reached for it, then stopped before touching. No, not touch. Direction. She remembered the path a word should take. Outward, from throat to air, from witness to world. The seal cracked. Seren's dead mouth opened. A single word escaped. Rootfire. The word did not sound spoken. It sounded unearthed. Every dragonfire oath in the hall turned black. Caelorn gasped as the fire beneath the nobles twisted against him. The dragon shadow under his body convulsed. Across the banners, across the throne, across every soldier's oath brand and noble seal, black gold flame reversed direction and pointed toward the obsidian dais. Not toward Morvaine. Not toward the knife. Toward the throne. Morvaine lowered the memory rod, smiling now because the damage had found a deeper wound. Elira looked at Caelorn as the court began to understand. Seren had not died because he spoke treason. He had died because he spoke the word that made dragonfire remember where it was rooted. And every oath in the hall now burned against the Dragon King's throne. Rootfire did not accuse the king. It accused the place his power came from. The black gold flames turned toward the obsidian dais as if every oath in the dragon court had suddenly remembered a buried road. Soldier brands flared beneath sleeves. Noble seals burned through silk. The dragon banners curled inward, not toward Caelorn's body, but toward the throne behind him. The throne did not move. That made it worse. It sat beneath the floating court, black and ancient, carved with dragon claws and crowned wings, accepting the accusation like stone that had heard its name before. Caelorn looked at the flames twisting from his own hands. For the first time, they did not obey him. They pulled downward, not to the floor, to the dais. Elira felt the direction of it inside the damaged place in her mind. Fire should rise from breath, blood, hunger, rage. Dragonfire should move outward from the living dragon or the living king who carried its blood. But this fire did not want sky. It wanted root. Something beneath the throne was calling it home. Morvaine's voice cut through the trembling hall. Do not let her continue. Caelorn's gold eyes stayed on the black fire. Why? Because Rootfire cannot accuse the throne without burning every oath sworn to it. The floating soldiers cried out as their oath brands brightened. Gold lines beneath their skin turned black at the edges. Some clutched their arms. Some clutched their throats. One young guard whispered, It hurts. Morvain lifted the memory rod, calm again because fear had found a structure he could use. Every soldier's vow, every noble treaty, every border pledge, every crown marriage, every dragonfire protection, oath, all of it is bound through the throne. If she digs deeper, the court does not simply fall. The kingdom catches fire from inside its promises. Elira looked at the nobles gripping Caelorn's dragonfire threads like ropes. They had cheered when Morvain emptied her. They had prayed for the floor only when they lost it. But panic did not make them less alive. Her emptiness shifted. Not memory. Choice. Caelorn turned toward her. Can you stop it? The question was wrong. She felt it immediately. He did too. His jaw tightened. No, that is not what I mean. Elira stared at him, blank eyes glowing. It is what kings mean first. The words landed hard. Caelorn accepted them. Morvain smiled. She understands you better than you think, Majesty. A king sees a broken law and asks how it can serve. Elira turned toward Morvain. And an archivist sees a wound and asks how long it can be hidden. The memory rod pulsed once. Good. She had struck something. Saren's body still hovered in Morvain's arms, mouth open now, the cracked gold seal on his tongue flickering around the word it had failed to bury. Rootfire. The word did not fade. It hung in the air like a coal pulled from under the world. Elira drifted closer to the dais. The court shifted with her. A few nobles screamed, but the movement was slower now. Direction had not returned, but it had begun to listen to her decisions. She pointed at the black fire sinking into the throne. That is not his fire. Caelorn's face changed. Not denial. Pain before understanding. Morvain spoke first. The throne stabilizes royal dragonfire. It has for generations. No, Elira said. The gold letters under her feet flickered. She searched the hollow rooms of her mind for the right shape. Not a full memory. Not yet. A direction. Fire should move from blood to command, she said slowly. This moves from command to something buried. The throne groaned. Every flame in the hall bent lower. Caelorn's dragon shadow convulsed, claws scraping nothing. Gold cracks opened along his throat again, brighter this time. He swallowed the pain, but Elira saw the cost. Morvain saw it too. Your Majesty, he said softly. Order her silence. The hall stilled around that sentence. The floating nobles looked from Morvain to Caelorn. The soldiers burned in their oath brands. Saren's body drifted between them like a dead answer. The knife remained suspended, aimed at Caelorn's authority, waiting to learn whether command would become another blade. Elira looked at the Dragon King. He had ordered her emptied once. Now the same choice stood in front of him, wearing a different crown. Morvain pressed harder. If she stops now, I can seal the word Rootfire back into the archive. Gravity can be patched. The prince can be recorded as poisoned by forbidden speech. The throne remains stable. Your soldiers survive. Your treaties survive. Your reign survives. Caelorn's voice was rough. And her? Morvain's eyes moved to Elira. Her damaged section must be removed completely. Elira felt the court waiting again. Not for truth, for convenience. Caelorn's fire trembled beneath the nobles. If he chose the throne, she would be emptied. If he chose her memory, the oath fire might burn through half the court before anyone touched the ground. Elira spoke before he could turn choice into sacrifice. Do not ask me to hold up a kingdom built on stolen fire. Caelorn looked at her for a long moment. Then he lowered his hands. The dragonfire threads beneath the nobles weakened. Panic erupted, but Caelorn did not let the fire vanish. He changed it. Instead of forcing the court to stay safe, he fed the fire into the air itself, spreading it thin, making it a net rather than a command. His knees bent under the strain. I will not silence her, he said. Morvain's face hardened. Then you choose collapse. No, Caelorn said. I choose witness before stability. Elira felt the words strike the broken law. The room shifted. Not upward, not downward, inward. The obsidian dais cracked around the throne. A black gold line opened from the base of the royal seat and ran across the marble toward Saren's floating body. The prince's cracked seal flared again. His dead hand lifted 1 inch, pointing not at Morvain now, not at Caelorn, but at the space beneath the throne. Elira closed her eyes. She chose one more direction. Not who killed him, not why, where the fire went after. The court dimmed. A memory opened inside the black flame. Saren stood in the royal archive earlier that night, alive, furious, one hand pressed to a forbidden ledger. Morvayn stood before him. The gold seal had not yet burned his tongue. The throne is not fed by the king, Saren said. It is feeding on what was buried beneath it. Morvayn's face was pale with rage. You misunderstand old architecture. No. Saren lifted the ledger. The first Veyr king bound dragon, hearts under the dais, and called their fire inheritance. The memory shook. Caelorn stopped breathing. Elira saw it clearly now. Not hearts like organs, not flesh, but ancient dragonfire cores, root flames torn from dead or sleeping dragons, and sealed beneath the throne to strengthen the bloodline above them. Borrowed fire. Stolen rote. Morvayn stepped toward Saren in the memory. Without Rootfire, your brother's crown fails. The borders fail. The court falls to ash. Saren answered. Then let the throne stand on truth or fall. The memory shattered. The present returned with a crack, like a mountain splitting. Caelorn's face was ashen. My fire, he whispered. Morvayn's voice turned cold. Your kingdom. Elira looked at Caelorn. What did the throne take? The obsidian dais answered before he could. Beneath it, something ancient moved. Not a law, not a word. A heartbeat. The black marble pulsed once. Every dragonfire oath in the hall went silent. Then, from under the throne, something vast and buried answered Rootfire with a second heartbeat. The throne's shadow split before the court understood what it answered. Black gold light pulsed beneath the obsidian dais, not like flame, but like something alive, breathing under stone. The carved dragon on the royal throne seemed to move for the first time in centuries. Every oath brand in the hall answered with the same rhythm. Pulse. Bane. Pulse. The soldiers stopped screaming. That silence frightened Elira more. Their brands still burned, but now the fire had order. It moved through them like veins leading back to the thing beneath the throne. Caelorn stared at the cracked dais as if the floor had opened under his bloodline. Morvayn recovered first. Rootfire chambers are royal inheritance. They were sealed before your reign, Majesty. The throne did not steal, it preserved. The pulse struck again. Noble seals flared beneath silk. Soldier brands blackened at the edges. Caelorn's dragonfire pulled downward from his hands, not toward the floor, but toward the dais. Elira felt the direction of it inside the damaged place in her mind. Fire should rise from breath, blood, hunger, rage. Dragonfire should move outward from the living dragon. This fire wanted root. Something beneath the throne was calling it home. They are not dead, Elira said. Morvayn's eyes cut to her. You have no authority to define royal fire. No, she said. I have the wound you made when you emptied the witness. The gold letters around her flickered. Caelorn looked at her. Can you hear them? Elira listened. At first, only the pulse. Then weight, heat, a memory of wings pressed under stone, a memory of fire commanded upward into a throne instead of outward into the sky. They do not speak like people, Morvayn answered, because they are fuel. The dais cracked from stair to throne. Elira looked at him. Fuel does not answer its name. End of lied, of lit it. End of Sephen. For the first time, Morvayn's calm thinned. Caelorn moved toward him. Elira lifted one hand. No, he stopped. Morvayn smiled. She commands you already. No, Elira said. I stopped him because killing you before Rootfire speaks would make your lies harder to untangle. Morvayn's smile died. Caelorn's voice came low. What do you need? Elira looked at the floating nobles, the burning soldiers, Saren's body drifting near the throne, and the gold seal cracked across his tongue. I need to remember where fire should go. Morvayn went still. A noble lord cried out, If the throne loses Rootfire, the kingdom falls. Morvayn seized the fear. Every border oath, every dragon shield, every treaty, every crown protection is bound through that dais. Pull the root loose, and the kingdom burns from inside its promises. Caelorn did not answer quickly. That mattered. A king should fear collapse. A guilty king should fear truth more. At last, he looked at the pulsing crack beneath the throne. A kingdom that survives by feeding on buried hearts is already failing. Morvain's voice sharpened. Say that louder, and half this court will call you unfit. Caelorn looked at the floating nobles. Then let them practice. The hall went silent. Elira felt the damaged rule turn toward him. Morvain did too. You would let a hollow-minded servant decide the direction of royal fire? Caelorn's jaw tightened. I would let the witness remember what you stole from her. Elira's chest hurt. Not forgiveness. Not love. Something sharper because it did not ask her to forget his guilt. She closed her glowing eyes. Fire should rise. No. Too simple. Dragonfire should answer living will, not buried theft. The moment she formed the thought, the room lurched. The nobles dropped half a foot. Screams tore through the hall. Caelorn flung out both hands. Gold fire spread under the court like a net, catching bodies before they struck tables, blades, and floating stone. The effort drove him to one knee in the air. Gold cracks opened along his throat. Morvain's voice rang out. You see? If she remembers, they fall. Elira looked at the falling court, then at Caelorn, bleeding gold to hold them. No, she said. They fell because I remembered alone. The floor letters pulsed. Caelorn lifted his head. Elira reached toward him, then stopped before touching. Your fire is still tied to the throne. Yes, if you keep catching them with stolen fire, the Rootfire keeps pulling through you. His eyes held hers. Then tell me where to stand. The question was quiet. It cost him more than command. Elira looked at the cracked dais. Under the throne. Morvain snapped. Absolutely not. Caelorn moved anyway. He released the fire net one thread at a time, forcing nobles to cling to pillars, ropes, and broken banners. Then he crossed the weightless air and placed himself directly above the crack where the pulse rose strongest. Rootfire struck him. His body arched. His dragon shadow roared without sound. Elira felt the path at last. Throne, king, buried hearts, stolen fire. She remembered one piece more. Fire stolen downward must be witnessed upward before it can be returned. The words burned through the court. Morvain went white. Elira turned toward Saren's body. He found the root. You sealed his mouth before he could witness it upward. The cracked gold seal on Saren's tongue shattered. A breath left the dead prince. Not speech. Release. Black gold fire surged up through Caelorn and burst above the throne in the shape of a vast dragon heart made of flame and shadow. It beat once. The court dropped another foot. Caelorn cried out. Elira moved without thinking and caught his wrist before he spun sideways through the air. Heat tore through her palm. His gold eyes found hers, wild with pain. Let go, he rasped. She did not. Behind them, Morvain raised the memory rod. Elira, Caelorn warned. She heard him. She heard Morvain. She heard the buried heart. And inside her empty mind, something ancient finally formed into a name. The Rootfire did not ask for vengeance. It asked to be remembered correctly. The first buried dragon heart spoke through the flame above the throne, and it spoke Elira's forgotten name before she did. The ancient name split the empty rooms inside Elira's mind. Not Elira Vale, not the servant name scratched beneath a silver tray. Ilarain. The moment it burned through her chest, the court shifted sideways as if the world had mistaken walls for floors. Nobles screamed. Swords drifted toward pillars. The chandelier slid across the air like a golden spider. Caelorn's wrist burned in Elira's hand, Rootfire tearing through him in brutal pulses as his dragon shadow clawed at nothing beneath them. He looked at her through pain. That is not the name they called you. No, Elira said. The answer frightened her because she knew it before she remembered why. Morvain lowered the memory rod toward her. Do not let that name settle. Caelorn twisted, even with Rootfire burning through his body. Stay away from her. Morvain's eyes sharpened. If she remembers herself too quickly, you all die. If she stays empty, Rootfire keeps waking. I am the only one in this court trained to decide what memory can survive. Elira looked at him. The name Illyrian beat once inside her ribs. With it came no mother's face, no childhood room, no comfort, only a flash. A small hand placing black stones in a line while someone whispered, World, rules are not commands. They are agreements the living keep with the world. Then the memory vanished. The court dropped another few inches. Caelorn's dragonfire net tightened beneath the nobles. He swallowed his cry, but gold cracks opened along his jaw. His body had become the bridge between falling bodies and stolen fire. Elira gripped his wrist harder. "Stop catching everyone." His eyes flashed. "They will fall. You are not catching them. The throne is using you to keep borrowing what it stole." The words cut him. "Good. Truth should." Morvayn spoke over the panic. "Rootfire cannot be returned. It is foundation fire. The first Veyr throne was built over dragon hearts because this kingdom was born under siege. Without buried fire, Dravarin would have been ash centuries ago." Elira looked at the vast dragon heart burning above the throne. Not one heart. That was the horror. Smaller pulses flickered inside it, layered like buried stars. Rootfire was a braided grave of dragonfire roots, forced to feed crown authority until no one remembered the difference between protection and theft. "Saren found this," Elira whispered. Caelorn's gaze moved to his brother's floating body. The seal was gone from Saren's tongue now, but death had not made him peaceful. It had made him unfinished. Morvayn said, "Saren found enough to panic, not enough to understand." He tried to speak. He tried to destroy the border shields with moral vanity. Caelorn's fire blackened at the edges. "Do not speak of him that way." Morvayn turned on him. "Then speak as king. Choose. Let this servant continue remembering, and the throne weakens. The court may fall, the shields may thin, or command me to remove the damaged section and preserve what still stands." The choice settled over Caelorn like a crown made of knives. The court watched him. They wanted him to save them. They wanted him to stop her. They wanted the old world back, even if the old world had been built over buried hearts. Caelorn looked at Elira. No command came. That mattered. "What happens if you remember the name fully?" he asked. Morvayn answered first. "She becomes a breach." Elira ignored him and listened inward. Elirain. Direction, fire, root, witness. The name did not give her power like a crown. It gave her responsibility like a wound. "I think," she said slowly, "I will remember where Rootfire was meant to go." Caelorn's breath roughened. "And the court? I do not know." She gave him the truth because he had given her guilt without hiding it. Morvayn smiled. "There. Even she admits it." Elira turned toward the floating court. "I also know what happens if I do not." The Rootfire heart beat above them. Every soldier's oath brand answered. Every noble's seal trembled. The throne drank. The court understood enough to fear the right thing. Caelorn closed his eyes once. When he opened them, he looked not at Morvayn, not at the nobles, not even at Saren. He looked at the throne. "I will not order her emptied." Morvayn's face hardened. "Then you choose a servant over a kingdom." "No," Caelorn said. "I choose the kingdom knowing what it stands on." The damaged law listened. The court dropped again. This time, Elira was ready. She did not remember down for everyone. She remembered down for one thing. The memory rod. Morvayn's silver rod fell from his hand. Not upward, not sideways. Down. It struck the cracked marble with a sound so ordinary the entire court froze. One object had obeyed the world correctly. Morvayn stared at his empty fingers. Elira understood the lesson immediately. She could not restore gravity all at once, but she could return obedience to one thing at a time. "The rod first," Caelorn said. Elira nodded. "It wounded the memory. It must answer before the court does." Morvayn lunged for it. Caelorn moved despite the Rootfire tearing through him. Gold fire snapped around Morvayn's wrist and held him back, but the effort dragged Caelorn closer to the crack above the throne. The Rootfire surged. Elira caught his arm with both hands. Heat swallowed her palms. For one violent instant she saw through him. A boy crowned too young, a brother laughing in forbidden archive dust, a king ordering silence because fear had taught him command was faster than trust. Then Caelorn saw through her. A servant bending over spilled wine while nobles forgot her name. A girl hearing a crime she should not survive. A mind emptied by order and still holding the world. They pulled apart, both breathing hard. Something between them changed. Not romance. Not forgiveness. Recognition with teeth. Morvain whispered, "World. Rule holders are not supposed to bind through damage." Elira turned sharply. There. He knew what she was. Gold letters flared around her floating body. World Rule Holder. Partial name restored. Elirain burned once in the air, then folded back into her chest. Morvain's calm cracked. That name should have been erased before she entered palace service. Caelorn went still. Before? Elira's stomach tightened. Morvain had said too much. The memory rod on the floor pulsed and began to write from the point where it had struck marble. Not in gold. In white erasure script. Servant memory file. Elira Vale. Origin. Rule holder line. Status. Oath. Bound by archive order. Purpose. Low visibility witness containment. Elira stared at the words. Low visibility. Servant. Containment. She had not been placed in the palace because she was nothing. She had been placed there because no one noticed servants until they became useful. Morvain's expression closed. Caelorn's voice was deadly quiet. "You put her in my court," Morvain answered with the coldness of law. "We put a world rule holder where the world's crimes were most likely to need forgetting." The Rootfire heart beat once above the throne. Elira's blank eyes filled with gold-white light, and the memory rod opened its final sealed line. Erasure authority. Dragon King's signet. Caelorn stopped breathing. Elira looked at him, not with surprise. With the terrible patience of someone learning one command had not begun the harm. It had only used a key already made in his name. The final line did not accuse Caelorn's hand. It accused the seal he had allowed to speak for him. White erasure script burned from the memory rod into the floating air, bright and merciless. Erasure authority. Dragon King's signet. The court did not gasp. It had no breath left for shock. Elira watched Caelorn's face change. Not into denial, not into anger, into recognition. So slow it looked like pain learning where to stand. His signet ring, black gold and dragon bone, burned on his right hand. The same hand that had ordered her memory emptied tonight. The same hand that had signed 100 palace protections, border commands, executions, pardons, and silent permissions men like Morvain could turn into knives. Caelorn looked at Morvain. "When?" Morvain's voice stayed calm. "At coronation. I never signed her file." "No," Morvain said. "You signed the continuance seal. Every Veyr king does. Archive actions necessary to preserve crown stability may proceed under royal signet, unless directly forbidden by the reigning king." The words moved through the court like cold water. Elira understood before Caelorn answered. A command did not need to be spoken every time. A key only needed to be made once. Caelorn's jaw hardened. "You used my coronation seal to bind her into service," Morvain corrected him, "to place her where she was most useful." Elira's fingers curled. Useful. That word had followed her through kitchens, halls, punishments, and silence. Useful hands. Useful eyes lowered. Useful memory gone when inconvenient. Useful body standing close enough to witness royal crimes and low enough to be erased without noise. She drifted closer to the memory rod. Caelorn turned slightly. "Elira." "No." He stopped. "Good." She looked at the burning file. "Do not warn me away from the record that explains why I was made yours to erase." His face tightened. He accepted that too. The Rootfire heart above the throne beat again. The court dropped inches. Caelorn's dragonfire net caught them, but weaker now. Every use of his fire dragged more black gold pain through his body. Morvain pointed toward the floating nobles. "This is exactly why the archive exists. A throne cannot survive if every old permission must be questioned during crisis." Elira looked at him. "Then stop calling it permission." The erasure script flickered. She touched the memory rod. This time, she did not remember a law. She remembered a corridor, a younger Elira, perhaps 14, kneeling in a servant intake chamber with a plain iron collar around her throat. Morvain stood before her with a ledger. She looked thinner then, eyes darker, hands folded tightly in her lap, as if she had already learned that fear should be kept neat. "Name?" Morvain asked. The younger girl opened her mouth. For one heartbeat, gold-white letters shimmered around her. Elirain. Morvain shut the ledger. "That name is not permitted here." A white rod touched her forehead. The memory bent. The girl blinked, and when she opened her eyes again, she whispered, "Elira Vale." Morvain smiled. "Good. A small name is easier to carry." The vision shifted. A servant contract appeared. Oath bound by Arch of Order. Low visibility witness containment. Under it, not Caelorn's hand, not his living consent, but the imprint of his royal signet copied from the coronation seal. The memory collapsed. Elira pulled her hand back. Her chest hurt. Not because the name Elira was false, because it had been made smaller on purpose. Caelorn stared at the fading record. "I was 18. Morvain said, "And king." Caelorn's face hardened. Elira turned to him. "Do not hide behind being young." His eyes met hers. "I will not. Do not hide behind not knowing. I will not. You wore the ring." His burned hand closed around the signet. "Yes." The answer landed between them. "Not enough. But true." Morvain's patience thinned. "Majesty, if you revoke archive signet authority now, every containment action tied to your coronation seal will open at once. Not only hers, every witness file, every sealed servant, every forbidden rule fragment placed under court silence." The Rootfire heart pulsed. Elira felt the danger. If every erased memory woke at once, gravity might not be the only wounded law listening. Even without naming new laws, the damaged world could tear under too many remembered directions. Caelorn looked at Elira. "What happens if I revoke it slowly?" Morvain answered, "The archive decides what returns first." Elira shook her head. "No, he does." Caelorn's gaze sharpened. She pointed to the signet. "If your seal was the key, then your hand chooses which lock opens first. Not the archive, not Morvain. You." Morvain went still. That told her she was right. Caelorn looked down at his ring. The dragonbone signet had begun to crack, black gold fire leaking through the lines. It did not want to be used against the system that had made it useful. "What lock?" he asked. Elira looked at the memory rod. "Mine." Morvain stepped forward. "Absolutely not." The damaged rule listened. His body stopped moving. Elira turned to Caelorn. "Open the first thing your signet took from me. Not all. One." His voice lowered. "And if it hurts you, it already did." That silenced him. Then he lifted his burned hand and pressed the signet against the memory rod. The rod screamed. White fire wrapped around his fingers. Caelorn's dragon shadow arched beneath him, and the Rootfire heart above the throne beat in answer, as if buried fire recognized a false key being forced to turn honestly for the first time. Caelorn did not pull away. "I revoke archive authority over Elira Vale's first sealed memory," he said. "By my signet, by my fault, by her witness." The ring split. A piece of black gold metal broke away and sank into the rod. The court dropped. Caelorn caught them with a broken sound. Elira's mind opened. Not all the way. One door. She remembered a night before the banquet. Caelorn Veyr in the archive, alive, placing a forbidden ledger into her hands because no noble would search a servant tray. "If I die," he whispered, "remember where the fire goes." Elira heard her own voice answer, "My lord, I am only a servant." Caelorn looked at her with urgent pity. "No, that is what they trained the court to see." He touched 2 fingers to the page. Gold-white letters rose. World Rule Lineage. Illyrian, keeper of directional law. Then footsteps. Morvain entering. Caelorn turning. Elira hiding the ledger beneath winecloth. The memory tore before she could see more. Elira came back gasping. A floating gold goblet near her hand suddenly remembered down and fell straight to the marble, shattering beside the knife. One object. One memory. One direction restored. Morvain's expression had gone hard with fear. Caelorn looked at Elira. "Caelorn gave you the ledger." She nodded, shaking. "And Morvain killed him before he could tell you why." "No," Morvain said quietly. The knife rose from the marble again. This time, it did not point to Caelorn. It pointed to the wine cloth still floating near the banquet table. The cloth unfolded by itself. A hidden ledger slid free into the air. Its pages opened to a drawing of the obsidian throne, the Rootfire heart beneath it, and a line written in Caelorn's hand. "If Rootfire wakes, The king must not be the first to remember. Elira reached for the page. Before she touched it, Morvayn whispered the old erasure command. The ledger caught fire, and every word on the page flew into Elira's open eyes. Saren's burned ledger did not give Elira knowledge. It gave her direction. The words struck her eyes like sparks thrown into deep water. They did not become sentences at first. They became paths. Lines of fire moved through her hollow mind, showing where dragonfire had traveled, where it had been bent, where it had been forced beneath the throne and made to climb through kings like a stolen vein. Elira screamed. The court dropped another foot. Caelorn caught the fall with dragonfire, but the net tore at the edges. Nobles slammed into hanging banners. A sword struck a pillar and spun away. Soldiers clutched their burning oath brands as black gold fire crawled from their wrists toward their hearts. Morvayn lowered the memory rod. Too late. The ledger had already entered her. Caelorn reached toward Elira, then stopped before touching her. What did it show you? Elira could not answer. The words burned behind her eyes. If Rootfire wakes, the king must not be the first to remember. She understood the warning now. Not fully. Enough to fear it. If Caelorn remembered first, his blood would act before his choice. The throne had been trained for generations to receive Rootfire through Veyr kings. A king's memory would not simply reveal the truth. It would open the old channel completely. Every buried dragon heart would surge through him, into the throne, into every oath tied to his seal. The court would not fall. It would be claimed. Elira turned toward him, breathing hard. Do not remember for me. Caelorn's eyes narrowed. I do not understand. That is why you are dangerous. The words cut him cleanly. He accepted them. Morvayn used the silence. She is correct, Majesty. If you try to read the ledger, Rootfire will follow your blood. You will not be a witness. You will be a gate. Caelorn looked at him. You knew. I preserve what must remain survivable. You buried dragons under my throne. No, Morvayn said. Your ancestors did. I maintained the architecture. Elira's eyes burned brighter. Architecture. That was what men called cruelty when they wanted it to sound too old to change. A new piece of Saren's ledger opened inside her. Not a new world rule. A geogram. Rootfire beneath the dais. Dragonfire oaths above it. Royal signet between them. Archive erasure around the edges, keeping witnesses small enough that no one could trace the direction of theft. Saren had written one line again and again. Do not let the king be the first memory. Elira looked at Caelorn. Saren was trying to protect you from becoming the throne's mouth. Caelorn's expression broke for one heartbeat. Only one, but Elira saw it. Brother hit him harder than king. Morvayn stepped closer to the burning ledger fragments. And he failed. Because he trusted a servant with a rule line she had been trained not to understand. Elira turned slowly. The court tilted with her. Say servant again, like it makes me smaller. Morvayn's mouth closed. Good. The damaged law listened when she named the wound correctly. Caelorn's signet hand trembled. The cracked ring still smoked from opening her first memory. What do you need? Elira looked at the floating page ash circling her face. The ledger had not returned everything. It had given her a route, not a destination. I need the next memory, she said. The one after Saren gave me the ledger. Morvayn's face hardened. If she remembers that, she remembers who changed the order. Caelorn went still. What order? Elira felt the answer hiding behind pain. She reached toward the ash of the ledger. This time, she did not let the memory enter all at once. She chose one sentence, one direction. The ash gathered into a narrow line of fire. Saren's voice returned inside the hall. If I die, do not bring the ledger to Caelorn first. Bring it to the floor beneath him. The air shook. Caelorn looked toward the cracked dais. Morvayn's eyes flashed, and for the first time, he moved without ceremony. He lunged for the ash line. Elira lifted her hand. Down. Only one thing obeyed. Morvayn. He fell. Not hard enough to die. Hard enough to remember the floor. His body struck the marble beside the memory rod with a sharp sound. The entire court froze in midair, watching the High Archivist lying where everyone else still floated. Elira stared at her own hand. One word, one body, one direction restored. Morvain pushed himself up slowly, bloodless with rage. You waste restoration on punishment. No, Elira said. I tested whether your body still knew truth from height. A few nobles looked away. Caelorn almost smiled. Almost. Then the Rootfire heart beat above the throne, and the almost vanished. The dais cracked wider. From beneath the obsidian steps, black gold light rose in thin strands and reached toward Caelorn's chest. Elira saw the danger at once. The throne was trying to remember through him. Do not think of the ledger, she said. Caelorn's jaw clenched. It is difficult not to think of the thing killing my brother again. Then think of your hand. He looked at her. The one that signed without knowing. The one that ordered silence. The one that can stop reaching for control. Pain crossed his face. Then he opened his burned hand. The black gold strands missed his chest and wrapped around the cracked signet instead. The ring screamed. Morven's head snapped up. No, Elira understood. The throne did not need Caelorn's whole body if it could reclaim the key. Take it off, she said. Caelorn hesitated. The court saw it. So did she. A king could remove a ring, but a king raised inside command could not easily remove the shape of being obeyed. Caelorn, Elira said, and it was the first time she spoke his name without title. Choose before the throne chooses through you. His face went still. Then he tore the signet from his hand. Blood and gold fire followed. The moment the ring left his skin, every oath brand in the hall went dark. Not healed. Waiting. Caelorn held the cracked signet out to Elira. She did not take it. No, she said. You do not give me the key. You put it where Saren told me. Caelorn turned toward the dais. Morvain rose to his knees. Majesty, if that signet touches the Rootfire floor, every archive permission tied to your reign will lose hierarchy. Caelorn looked back once. Good. He drove the signet into the cracked marble beneath the throne. The obsidian dais opened like a wound, and below it, hundreds of buried dragon hearts began beating in the dark. The darkness beneath the throne did not roar. It listened. Hundreds of buried dragon hearts pulsed under the open dais, each one wrapped in black gold root chains that led upward into the broken throne. Their fire did not leap out. It did not devour the court. It beat in place, ancient and restrained, as if the dragons beneath Draverin had spent centuries learning not to scream. That restraint broke something in Elira. She had expected rage. Rage would have been easier. Instead, the Rootfire waited for direction. The floating court hung above the cracked floor in stunned silence. Soldiers stared at their darkened oath brands. Nobles clutched ropes, curtains, and each other. Caelorn knelt beside the split dais, one hand bleeding from where the signet had torn free. The broken ring smoked in the marble below him, half swallowed by Rootfire light. Morvain rose slowly from the floor. He was the only person standing properly now. That made him look less powerful than before. The signet has touched root, he said. Crown hierarchy is suspended. Caelorn's voice was rough. Good. No, Morvain said, not good. Without hierarchy, the Rootfire will choose its oldest direction. Not mercy, not justice. Return. The hearts below beat harder. The court dropped an inch. Screams rose again. Elira lifted one hand, and the fall slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. Pain cut through her eyes as if the burned ledger still lived there. She understood now why Seren had written that the king must not remember first. Caelorn's blood would have made the buried fire rush upward into command. Morvain's archive would have sealed it back into usefulness. The court would have named either result stability, but Rootfire did not need a king first. It needed a direction that did not lie. Elira drifted closer to the opening. Caelorn reached toward her, then stopped himself. Good. He was learning the shape of not claiming. Morvain saw the restraint and smiled thinly. Touch the root, girl, and every shield fed by it will weaken. Elira did not look at him. You said that already. Because truth remains true when repeated. No, she said. Fear remains useful when repeated. The words struck the open floor. One buried heart brightened. Morvain's expression hardened. Elira looked down. The heart nearest the surface was enormous, cracked with old gold, wrapped in root chains driven through flame instead of flesh. Around it drifted fragments of ancient dragon bone, not dead, not alive, held in a cruel middle state by crown command. A name moved toward her. Not spoken. Carried. Veyr, the first buried heart. Elira's breath caught. The court shifted with her. Caelorn heard it too somehow. His face went pale. That was the dragon carved on the first throne. Morvain snapped. A symbol. Elira looked at him. A prisoner. Rootfire answered. The chain around Veyroth's heart tightened and pulled black flame up through the throne. Caelorn arched as the pull struck the place where his signet had been. Even without the ring, the old path still knew his blood. Elira moved toward him. Morvain lifted the memory rod from the floor. The rod had cracked, but enough of it remained to glow white. By archive emergency preservation, he said, if Rootfire threatens kingdom continuity, all rule-holder memory may be reduced to servant function. Caelorn turned, gold eyes burning. You have no signet. Morvain's smile was cold. I have precedent. The rod flashed. Elira felt the command aim for her mind. Not all of it. The useful parts. Tray roots. Lowered eyes. Obedience. The small name. The neat fear. The trained instinct to hear an order before hearing herself. Her body froze. For one breath, she was 14 again, kneeling before Morvain as he told her a small name was easier to carry. Then Caelorn stepped between the rod and her. The erasure hit him instead. White fire slammed into his face. He did not scream. That was worse. Elira felt the spell strike his memory. Coronation smoke, Saren's laughter, childhood lessons, every royal command carved into him until obedience felt like identity. Morvain had meant to reduce her into a servant. Hitting Caelorn, the spell found something else to reduce. A king into a boy, Caelorn dropped from the air. For one terrible second, he fell correctly. Elira caught the direction before he hit. Stop. The word froze him inches above the cracked marble. Her body shook with effort. Morvain stared at Caelorn with something close to disgust. You waste yourself on one damaged witness. Elira looked at the Dragon King hanging helplessly between fall and root. No, she said. He chose where your command landed. Caelorn opened his eyes. For a moment he looked younger, not innocent, never innocent, but stripped of throne shape. Elira, he whispered. The sound of her small name hurt. Then his gaze sharpened, and he corrected himself. Elirain. The buried hearts beat once. Not in pain. Recognition. The name passed through Rootfire, through the cracked dais, through the court, and every floating body lowered another inch without falling. Elira understood at once. Her restored name did not command the hearts. It oriented them. Say Veyroth, she told Caelorn. Morvain went rigid. Do not. Caelorn did not look at him. He looked into the open floor. Veyroth, he said. The first buried dragon heart flared. One root chain turned from black to gold white. Not broken. Remembered. Elira breathed through the pain behind her eyes. Again, Caelorn's voice roughened. Veyroth? The chain loosened. The throne cracked higher up its back. Morvain lunged. This time, the soldiers moved. Not under oath. Under choice. 2 guards seized him before he reached the rod. Their brands were dark, no longer burning with command, but their hands were steady. Morvain looked truly furious for the first time. You are sworn to the throne, one guard answered, trembling. Not to theft. The court heard it. So did the Rootfire. Elira felt the next direction open. Not release. Return. If Veyroth's fire tore free, the throne would collapse. If it stayed chained, the kingdom remained built on stolen root. But if the first chain could remember its true path, fire might return without shattering everything above it. Elira looked at Caelorn. You must stop being the channel. He was still suspended inches above the marble, pale with erasure pain. How? She looked at his bleeding hand where the signet had been. Tell the throne your blood is not a road. Morvain laughed once, sharp and desperate. No Veyr king can renounce root channel and live. Caelorn looked at Elira. No request for comfort. No plea for rescue. Only choice. Then witness me, he said. Elira's chest tightened. He pressed his bleeding palm to the cracked dais. I am Caelorn Veyr, he said, voice breaking but clear. My blood is not a road for stolen fire. The Rootfire surged. The court fell 3 feet. Elira screamed and caught the direction with both hands. The first chain around Veyroth's heart snapped upward, not into the throne, but into the air above Elira's head. A dragon-shaped shadow unfurled from the fire. Ancien, vaste, incomplete. It lowered its burning skull toward her, and in its open jaws lay Saren's final unburned page. Morvain shouted, "Do not read it," but the page turned by itself. Across it, in Saren's hand, was one final warning. The Rootfire does not need a king. It needs the one who can teach it where home is. The ancient dragon shadow looked past Elira, toward the floating court, toward every oath, toward the world still waiting to fall. Then Veyroth's heart spoke one word: choose. Elira did not answer the dragon heart with yes. Kings said yes to power. Archivists said yes to preservation. Nobles said yes to whatever kept the floor beneath their feet. Servants were trained to say yes before they understood the cost. Elira had been emptied because yes was easier to erase than refusal. So she looked into Veyroth's burning skull and said, "No one chooses for all of you again." The ancient dragon shadow stilled. Beneath the throne, hundreds of buried hearts beat separately for the first time. Not one Rootfire, not one royal inheritance. Many stolen fires, forced for centuries to feed one throne. Morvain struggled against the guards. You cannot ask buried fire what it wants. It will tear the kingdom apart. Elira turned her glowing eyes on him. You never asked. That is why it learned to burn through chains. Caelorn knelt by the cracked dais, one bleeding hand pressed to black marble. His body shook as he fought the old channel. Gold fire crawled under his skin, searching for the throne, but he held it back with will alone. "Eliraine," he said, voice rough, "I cannot hold much longer." She knew. The court knew. The throne knew. The floating nobles had begun to sink in uneven inches. A sword hit the marble, a table cracked. The world was remembering gravity in pieces, and pieces could kill as surely as lies. Elira looked down into Veyroth's heart. Where is home? For a breath, nothing answered. Then the first dragon heart pulsed toward the sky. Not the throne. Sky. Elira understood. Home was not a place beneath stone. Not a king's blood. Not a signet. Home was the direction fire had been denied. Upward. Outward. Free enough to return without being owned. She lifted both hands. "I will not command you," she said. "I will witness the direction." Gold-white letters flared around her. Directional law. Partial restoration. Risk. Mass descent. Morvain laughed, breathless. Restore upward fire, and every floating body falls. Elira looked at the court. Then they choose too. Panic rippled through the nobles. She raised her voice. Hold what you can. Help who is near you. Do not wait for the throne. The order was not royal. That was why it worked. A noblewoman grabbed a servant's wrist. A soldier caught a child page near the banners. Lords who had never carried more than goblets wrapped arms around pillars. The court became ugly, frightened, human. Caelorn spread his remaining dragonfire beneath them, not as a command, but as separate handholds. Elira felt the difference. His fire was no longer trying to save everyone alone. It was giving them something to grip. She looked at him. Do not be the road. Caelorn pressed his bleeding palm harder into the dais. My blood is not a road for stolen fire. The first chain around Veyroth's heart snapped. The court dropped. Screams tore through the hall, but bodies caught ropes, fire, pillars, hands. A few struck tables. One noble hit the floor hard. No one died. Elira screamed too. Broken gravity tore through her skull as if every falling body dragged a hook through her memory. Caelorn reached toward her, then stopped. She saw the restraint. It mattered. Again, she whispered. A second chain snapped. Then a third. Goblets shattered. Blades struck stone. Curtains tore loose. Dragon banners fell like wounded wings. Each chain broken returned another piece of weight to the world. Morvain stared as the court survived without waiting for his law. No, he said. Without archive hierarchy, memory becomes unstable. Servants speak, witnesses contradict, records fracture. Elira turned to him. Records should fracture when they were built to hide graves. The broken memory rod pulsed weakly on the floor. She pointed at it. Down. The rod fell flat. Its white glow spilled into the marble, writing every file it had hidden. Servant names, sealed witness reports, erased orders, archive permissions copied through royal authority. The floor became a map of theft. Morvaine's knees struck the ground. Not because anyone forced him, because gravity remembered him next. Caelorn looked at the files, then at Saren's body still floating near the throne. His voice was cold. Morvaine Thorn, you are stripped of archive authority. Morvaine looked up. You have no crown authority. Your signet is broken. Caelorn looked at Elira. She understood the silent question. Then she shook her head. Do not borrow mine. His mouth tightened. Then he pressed his bloodied hand to the floor beside Saren's body. Then not by crown, he said, by brother. The cracked dais answered. Saren's body lowered at last. Not falling. Being returned. He came to rest before the throne he had died trying to warn. The final page drifted onto his chest. Veyroth's shadow bowed its ancient head. Elira felt the last direction open. Not every buried heart could be freed tonight. If she tore every chain, Draverin would collapse. If she sealed them again, nothing had changed. So she chose the path between. Veyroth first, she said. The rest witnessed, not forgotten, not owned, returned one by one. The Rootfire hearts answered. Their chains changed from black to gold white. No longer feeding the throne, no longer breaking free in chaos. Waiting, named, seen. Veyroth's heart rose through the dais. For one impossible moment, a vast dragon made of black gold fire filled the court. Its wings passed through shattered banners, broken stone, oath brands, blood, and crown like a memory correcting itself. Then it flew upward, through the broken ceiling. In Todam. Gravity returned. The last bodies dropped. The court crashed into the floor in sobs, broken glass, torn silk, and human terror. Caelorn fell to one knee. Elira landed beside him, pain splitting through her skull. He reached out, then stopped. May I? The question was small. It cost him more than command. Elira should have said no. Part of her wanted to. But the hall was no longer floating, her mind was no longer empty. And the man before her was not asking to be forgiven. He was asking where his hand was allowed to be. Only to help me stand, she said. Caelorn's hand came beneath her elbow, careful and shaking. Morvaine knelt near the dead memory rod, surrounded by the files he had buried. Soldiers bound him with torn archive ribbon. Servants stood closest to the written records, reading erased names aloud because no one else had earned the right to begin. Caelorn looked at the broken throne. It cannot remain. No, Elira said. But neither can the kingdom fall just because truth finally touched it. He looked at her. What do you require? She looked at the open dais, the waiting Rootfire hearts, Saren's body, the shattered signet, and the servants reading their own names. Every oath rewritten without stolen fire. Every witness restored by choice. Every Rootfire heart returned one by one. And no memory touched without consent. Caelorn bowed his head. Not as king to queen. As guilty man to witness. It will be done. Elira's small name still lived inside her. So did Elirain. One had survived kitchens. One had survived erasure. She would not let the court make her choose between them. She stood in the ruined dragon court beside a crownless king, beneath the broken ceiling where the first freed dragon had flown into mourning. She was not empty. She was not owned. She was the direction the world remembered after falling.